Hi everybody, it's me as always, your host Gambit896, and I'm back with another review for you guys. Today I'll be reviewing The Last of the Greats, Volume 1. This is written by Joshua Hale Fialkov and illustrated by Brent Peeples. And as you can see from the spine, this is published by Image Comics, and this first trade collects the 5-issue limited series of The Last of the Greats. So the story opens up and we meet a team of human expeditionists who have been sent to Antarctica to find the last of the Greats. And the Greats were here we have a first shot of the expedition team, led by our main human character of Charles, I forget the guy's name, Charles Beaumont, Beaumont I think is how you pronounce his name. Beaumont, however you choose to pronounce that. And they've essentially, like I said, been tasked with finding the last of the Greats. And the Greats were a race, or a line of God-powered like beings who essentially revealed themselves to humanity, and their mission was to essentially prepare the world for events that the Greats knew were coming. And so they revealed themselves to humanity to essentially put the world right and also put humanity on the right path in order to brace themselves for events that would happen in the future. Here we have a great double page spread of the Greats, as you can see here and here. This is my first exposure to Peeples' art style. It is a little bit more cartoonish, but throughout the 5 issues it does really grow on me, I found, and I do really like the artwork, even if it is a bit more on the cartoonish, more conventional side of comic book artwork. But we find out that the last of the Greats is actually evil. He's kind of the ugly duckling of the Greats, if you will. And when the story begins, 6 of the 7 Greats have been killed, and therefore, unfortunately, humanity is stuck with the last of the Greats, who happens to be evil. And the first task that the Great undertakes is stopping this alien invasion, which you can see from this double page spread here and here. But unbeknownst to our expedition team, the Great has actually, or the last has actually set up this alien invasion and cuts a deal with the aliens to essentially fake an invasion, and then at the end of his bargain with the aliens, he decides to kill off, I believe it's 2/3, yeah, 2/3 of the people living on planet Earth. And if that isn't an example of how evil this guy is, I'll give you an example later on, or another example I should say. And so what the Great essentially does after the foiled supposed alien invasion, he uses Charles Beaumont as essentially a puppet in order to essentially get the people of the United States behind the last, and essentially to worship him as their last great savior, and he will essentially protect and deliver the American people as long as they are completely and totally obedient to him and worship him in their, well, basically if they eat, sleep and drink, you know, worshipping the Great, essentially. Here's another double page spread of the Great about to address his adoring public, as you can see there and there. But then we find out that another example of how evil the last actually is. He finds this young kid who hates all of the Greats because of an event that happened in his life involving one of the Greats, which I'm not going to give away as I want you guys to read it. But what happens is the Great actually probes the kid's memories and finds out what the memory actually is and what causes him to actually hate all of the greats. But then what the last does is he wipes the kid's memory, and from doing this the young kid adores the last practically. And then what the last actually does is he takes the kid back to his adoring public and says, "This kid is my responsibility, he's an orphan, I'm going to look after him as I will all of you, you're all my responsibility, and I'm now going to go and find this kid a new foster family." But actually what he does is he flies the kid over the ocean to where a shiver of sharks is circling in the ocean, and he drops the kid into the water where the sharks are swimming, presumably to be eaten alive and devoured by sharks. So that's just another example of how evil this guy actually is. And then the story basically follows on from our main human character Charles, who has a hidden agenda and secret of his own, and it turns out that Charles was actually romantically involved with one of the last's sisters, who was also one of the greats, who we come to know as Africa. And it turns out Charles's little girl, or his daughter, actually has the same powers as the last, who he perceives to be a threat, along with Charles. And here we see another pretty messed up event in this 5-issue limited series. This is actually the last actually morphing or shapeshifting into the form and appearance of his sister, which is Charles's former lover and his daughter's mother, as you can see there. Sorry guys, let me just flip my notes page over. There's also some hidden agenda going on with some individuals who are existing on another plane of existence that we come to know as the garden. And the Great isn't too pleased about this hidden agenda when he finds out who is actually involved. And then there's also some other really messed up scenes in the last but one issue of the 5-issue limited series, which I'm not going to go into as I don't want to spoil anything, and I want you guys to pick this up and read it for yourselves. But here's another cool example of a double page spread of a fight scene between Charles's daughter and the last, as you can see there. And then in the last few pages there's also another really mind-screwy reveal in the story on the part of Joshua Hale Fialkov. And now apparently this trade paperback was released back in March of 2012, and another fellow YouTuber, Mr. James Donnelly, really sang this 5-issue limited series praises because he really enjoys Joshua Hale Fialkov's writing on another series which we both enjoy and we both have in common, which is I, Vampire. This is Volume 1, Tainted Love. This is from DC's New 52, and this collects the first 6 issues of the series. This is also written by Fialkov and illustrated by Andre Sorrentino. I absolutely highly recommend you pick up I, Vampire if you haven't already. This is an absolutely fantastic book, and just as a little side note, it is a vampire book, but it's not a rip-off of Twilight. So there's a bonus recommendation for you guys. But anyway, Mr. James Donnelly sang this series praises, and he was actually my secondary main inspiration for picking up this series, as well as also, like I said, being a big fan of Joshua Hale Fialkov's writing. And so what the initial, according to James, what the initial plan was from a tweet from Joshua Hale Fialkov, depending on the sales of the trade paperback of The Last of the Greats, he would then go into another series called The Return of the Greats, which I'm not sure if the trade paperback sales were enough to spark Image Comics interest to give Joshua Hale Fialkov the go-ahead to write and publish The Return of the Greats. But I definitely, if the trade paperback sales were successful and Joshua Hale Fialkov will indeed write The Last of the Greats, then I absolutely cannot wait to read it. This was a really great 5-issue limited series. If you're a fan of Joshua Hale Fialkov's writing, I highly recommend you pick this up. If you're a fan of Image Comics, or if you're a fan of a different take on the anti-superhero genre of comic books, then I definitely think The Last of the Greats is a definite pickup for you guys. But also this book is actually really thought-provoking. From the first 2 issues, the 2 issues of the trade paperback, the last actually comments on human beings as a whole and human nature. There's also, for the most part, if you really sat down and thought about it for a minute or two, the last was actually, he's right in some of the stuff he actually says, in the respect that human beings would probably fear that which is unknown to them and that which human beings perceive as strange, and would eventually perhaps come to intensely dislike the unknown. And let's face it, no human being really likes adapting to change if it's a daunting change. For example, I had to move away from home to study in University College Birmingham in the UK, in England for a year, and for the first few weeks I couldn't stand it and I wanted to come home every single night. I wanted to get on the train and come back, but after a while I got used to it and grew accustomed to it. But whereas that's more of a lifestyle change, if there's changes in, if there's changes in the workplace or work hours or whatever, and the particular person doesn't like the working hours or whatever, then they're going to resent that change. Human beings don't like making mistakes, and they also don't like having other people maybe correct their mistakes. As, like I said, the last also makes a comment on, through Joshua Hale Fialkov's writing, in the first or second issue of this 5-issue limited series. So yeah, like I said, if you're also a fan of thought-provoking comics, then I definitely think The Last of the Greats is definitely worth the pickup. And that about concludes this review video, guys. If I had to give this a rating, I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely think you should pick it up. Thank you everybody for watching, as always. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. As always, feel free to leave some comments below in the comment section. And if you're new to my channel and you'd like to see more, please feel free to click the subscribe button, which is now down there, thanks to the new YouTube layout. And until next time, this is Gambit896 signing off, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, guys.